has been a board-certified family medicine physician since 1983 and a founding diplomat of the American Board of Integrative and Holistic Medicine since 2000. He's an inaugural member of UTMB's Academy of Master Teachers and has won several teaching and clinical honors. He has twice been awarded the Osler Clinical Excellence Teaching Award and was inducted as a faculty member into the National Medical Honor Society. In 2018, he was awarded the UT System's highest teaching award, the Regent's Outstanding Teacher Award. He has been repeatedly listed as a Texas Super Doc and a Best Doctor in America. He received the Bravewell Service Awards in 2019 from the Academic Consortium of Integrative Medicine and Health. He has authored or edited several hundred scientific and lay press articles and 3 books. He's busy. He has lectured extensively both domestically and internationally. Although he retired from active clinical and academic practice last year, he stays busy with community service, writing and speaking to our benefit. Personal fitness, Tai Chi, Spanish and Mandarin languages, piano and music study, culinary medicine, gardening, world travel, and deepening relationships with family and friends. How did you have time to work? So it's my honor to welcome Dr. Sierpina, who will share his thoughts on bringing meaning, joy, and gratefulness to our world and to our lives. Please welcome Dr.
Thank you, Paul, for that introduction, just as I wrote it. All right, well, thank you all for coming in. Thank you, Paul, and the Professional Development Committee for inviting me. I was a little surprised, actually, to address a topic such as building a better world. As a family doctor, I kind of think of myself as taking care of one person at a time, educating one student at a time. And I said, well, that's actually kind of a good way to start to build a better world, one person at a time. And that's going to be kind of my theme tonight, is that each one of us is responsible for making ourselves better before we try to make the world better. But you can't really do both without kind of one without the other. So I do want to acknowledge also Galveston College. It's just been amazing. I talked with our friend and neighbor and Miles Shelton, and how much has gone on since his couple decades here, how much growth. It's been amazing how much community activity has happened, how much education has expanded, how many new buildings, student housing. I was lucky to be on the Galveston College Foundation for a while, which gave us a chance to see the inner workings of how students who graduated from high school here in Galveston get free tuition and all that. It's pretty amazing. We even had a new conference this week on women in industry. That's a beautiful thing. You guys have partnered with UTMB and expanded your healthcare dimensions quite a lot. The culinary school, the vocational school. Galveston College is really a jewel here in Galveston, and we're lucky to have it. So I think of education kind of as key to changing the world in any way that we can meaningfully. I have to say it's been true for me. I was second generation. My grandparents were born in Poland, came over, they were farmers or working in a factory, and I didn't even speak English until I was like 3.5 years old. My family, no one had gone to college until I did. I was raised in a very nice, wonderful, strong family. My mother kept telling us we're not poor. She said that so many times, I wondered. I never really felt poor, but we had to work, and that was kind of, education was my upward mobility. As I initially went to Arizona State University, I worked in the student cafeterias, started as a dishwasher, ended up as a student manager. I worked summers carrying heavy things in the Phoenix Sun for a moving and storage company, and got scholarships, and that's kind of how I worked my way to school. And I wanted to be a marine biologist. I kind of thought, well, I'm going to be like Jacques Cousteau guy going under the water, taking pictures and stuff. It's going to be very cool. And when I got accepted to grad school, I was dismayed to find out I was seasick all the time on research lessons. So I decided I had to do something to get back on land and eventually reset my goals to use my scientific training to go into medicine. But that was a period of my life where I really recognized how important it is that we educate our younger people. And I was always an avid reader. I read continuously from the time I was a child, and I think that really helped me. And I really like to encourage you to read to your children and encourage them to read. There's a great group here in town called Smart Family Literacy, run by Liz Turner. It's a wonderful group, and they give books to kids and support them in any chance you get. Moving forward. So as I kind of take this theme of being the change that you wish to see in the world, Mahatma Gandhi said that. Leo Tolstoy says something similar. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but really no one thinks of changing himself. I saw another quote today that struck me by Howard Thurman, who is a mystic, theologian, philosopher, author, civil rights leader. He said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have become alive. Howard Thurman. Well, I took a little different path once I got into medicine. I was a bit of an iconoclast. I kind of came out of the hippie era. I did have hair at one time. And I found the area that I was most interested in was wellness. I got tired of studying illness and the treatment of disease, which is obviously what medicine focuses on. And part of the whole wellness concept is that our choices about our health care are essential, much more important than what your doctor prescribes or recommends for you. And that day-to-day personal responsibility really has affected my approach to medicine. And I kind of blame it on my mom. She always put a prevention magazine as reading material in the bathroom when I was a kid. So I was always reading about different diets and herbs and lifestyle things, and that evolved over the years to a more holistic view of the human body. And not health, it was not just the body, but mind, body, and spirit. And I think attitude is huge. Just an aside, I had one patient who was always sick, and I think it was really her attitude. She had a conflict with a family member about their estate, their father's estate. And she was always coming in with depression, needing depression medication, having headaches, things like that. And I really attracted to the fact that she and this brother had not kind of resolved this problem. And it kind of is a factor that these psychosocial determinants of health are very important, and they're much more important a lot of times than our genetics, our environment, and even our diet, exercise, and all of those things, as important as those may be. So I ended up moving into this holistic space. It eventually became complementary alternative medicine, and it became called integrative medicine or lifestyle medicine. Now even the Veterans Affairs has a new term called whole health, which is patient-centered medicine, giving people a full spectrum of everything from acupuncture to surgery for whatever it is that their goals are for their health. So I picked some books, 3 books, and I'm going to just kind of touch on the main themes of each of these to touch base with you. And you may want to read them, but you'll at least get the idea. Why these books? Well, they're things I've been thinking about, and they've been helping transform my life in the last few years. And as Eleanor Roosevelt said, really, you should learn from the mistakes of others, because you won't live long enough to make all of your own. So Viktor Frankl, I read Viktor back in medical school actually, and he was a Viennese psychiatrist who went through the Holocaust. He was offered a visa to the United States, a permanent visa, but he decided to stay in Vienna to care for his elderly parents, and then the whole family was swept into a concentration camp where they all died except for him. And I'll tell you a little bit about his concept. Another book is the Book of Joy. This is a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and they got together for a 5-day conversation with the burning question of how do we find joy in the face of life's inevitable suffering? How do we find joy in the context of the suffering in the world, and the world that, not only the world around us, but within us? And then the final one is one that I really have been intrigued with. It's called Wake Up Grateful by Christy Nelson. And Christy, in her recovery from stage 4 cancer, discovered gratefulness and taking nothing for granted. We were at a family event not too long ago. My brother, who's 13 years younger than me, said, what would you have done differently in your life? And I said, I think I would have been more grateful about what was going on. Always, instead of always looking for the next thing, being more grateful in the moment and not taking so many things in life for granted. So this is kind of the Frankl book. And what is meaning? And he kind of defines it as what we give to items, events, and people in our world, and how we perceive and interpret them. And that is essential to our life. He developed this whole school of psychiatry. It was called the Third School of Viennese Psychiatry after Freud and Adler. And he based it on meaning, helping people define what was meaningful in their life. It was called logotherapy. And he was in this concentration camp setting and was one of 28 people, one out of 28 people survived basically. And he found that people who did had some meaning and purpose to carry them forward. For him, it was to create this manuscript about logotherapy and this new psychiatry that he was working on. But he noticed also that people who had been pampered in their life and had been kind of always taken care of didn't do very well. The ones that had struggled and fought and had to face difficult situations did better. And the ones who actually reached out and tried to help other people, even sharing a little bowl of soup with them, a thin watered soup or a crust of bread, those were the people that did better and survived. They had compassion for others. They weren't just focused on themselves. This little tattoo kind of makes me blush a little bit. I was in Chicago as a first-year medical student, and I was examining a gentleman, and he had a tattoo like this on his arm. And I said, "What is that?" And he was kind of like, "You don't know?" And I said, "Sorry." And this was before tattoos became so commonplace anyways, but this was a concentration camp tattoo. And it was a major event for someone to even survive this situation. But they made the choice, the ones that survived, to have this sense of meaning and purpose for something beyond themselves. And this is one of the greatest lessons I think Viktor Frankl shared with us is this quote: "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." And I think that people look around in the world and they see certain things that are not going their way, and they can kind of get into despair about that, or they feel hopeless. But that's a choice. And as I mentioned, attitude is a very important part of good health, but also it's a good part of mental health and also spiritual health. You can't continue if you're like hopeless that things can be or could get better. So Frankl talked about responsibility, taking responsibility for that ultimate choice. He said each person has a personal identity, and your identity is unique to you, and your meaning is unique to you. What you want to accomplish for you, and you will know deep in your heart, and I'm going to ask you some homework here before you leave, to think about what it is that brings meaning and purpose to your life. And it's more than just your goals, okay? Your goals can be very important, but what underlies the goals? What's the reason that's an important goal for you to acquire something or to achieve something or build a relationship? So this is going to require some reflection on your part. But his point was we should go beyond self-actualization to self-transcendence. That is, we kind of reach this sense of peace within ourselves, but we also transcend it by reaching out to others and doing what we can for others. He also talked about this idea of meaning in terms of the why of life. The why of life. So a lot of times we can focus on the how, and sometimes that's what gives us the confusion, like how are we going to do this and how are we going to do that. But how to survive in these camps, he said anybody can survive, people can survive anyhow as long as they can come up with a why for themselves. Why. So his key message is finding meaning is central to human life. Survival, thriving, and joy. So I just ask you, this is your homework, what brings meaning to your life? And this is something deep. It's not something you just kind of like, well, this or that. This is an important trend, and this is relevant at whatever stage in your life you're at, whatever part of life's journey. If you're a student, or you're like me, retired and moving on to another chapter in life. But all of us need to have some sense of meaning and purpose, or things don't go well. And you see this actually with patients or people who retire. There's a huge spike within about 2 years, especially among men who retire. They don't seem to survive. And why? Because they had all their work, all their life was invested in their work. Their wives tend to do a little bit better because they have family and social network outside of work sometimes. But this is a well-documented fact that without that sense of meaning and purpose, and those were the people that died in the camps as well, but we see it now in the people that are retiring from their various work. So, what brings meaning to your life? Just think about that. Give it some thought. So what about joy? Why is joy of interest to me? I kind of wrote an article last, I think in December, for the Galveston News that said, we see joy around all the time around Christmas time, right? Everybody's talking about joy. What happens to it the rest of the year? Nobody ever talks about joy. And what is joy? Well, this book came into my hands. It was written in 2015, and the Dalai Lama is, as you know, a Tibetan Buddhist, and Desmond Tutu is an archbishop in Episcopalian Church. And they found that joy is an inside job. It's not something you get from something that happens to you, but it's something that is inherent. And having love and compassion for the suffering of others helps heal your own pain, but also is a source of sustainable joy. The story of their meeting was interesting. He was 80 years old, the Dalai Lama, and about 4 or 5 years before that, he had tried to go to Desmond Tutu's 80th birthday, and that was down in South Africa. But the Chinese government, the Chinese communists, I'm going to say, were very opposed and are very opposed to the Dalai Lama. I guess they're afraid he's going to come up with a soft way of defeating them. But they wouldn't let South Africa allow him a visa to come to this birthday party for Desmond Tutu. Now, keep in mind, both of these guys won Nobel Peace Prizes. Okay, 84 for Desmond Tutu for his work with apartheid, and the Dalai Lama in 1989, the same year as Tiananmen Square, for his work in trying to preserve the Tibetan culture in the world. So anyway, he couldn't get to his Tutu's birthday, so Tutu came to him in India for the Dalai Lama's birthday. And as I said, that was their goal, was to kind of get that sense of what is it that we can do? What is joy in a world like ours? And is it something that we need to really discuss and delve into? Because it's not just about our personal joy, but it's a state of natural being. If you don't think joy is a natural state, you should go to the playground and watch 3 or 4-year-olds play. My wife and I go for a walk at Moody Methodist Church inside track on rainy days, and down below is all these kids from first, second, or they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they come out screaming. They're always running, shrieking, laughing, and some people would say that kind of is our natural state, and somehow we unlearn that as we age. And if you guys have kids, you know that's kind of their bubbling natural state. And there's a certain amount of cultural blindness then that shows up later as we mature, and to the joy and beauty of life and of nature. And then there's these kind of blocks to it. Things happen in our lives, grief and fear and stress and anger. But both of these spiritual leaders really talked about the fact that those obstacles for joy are actually the things that make our joy deeper. That when we've gone through those, we can be stronger. And we also extend to realize other people are suffering. And so Tutu talks about you show your humanity by how you see yourself, not as apart from others, but from your connection with others. And the Dalai Lama, compassion and love for others, for their suffering, moves us from our own pain to a place of joy. He was talking about pain he was having when he had a gallbladder attack or something. And people were kind of waving him onto the hospital. And somebody asked him how he dealt with it. He said, I had to think about the pain of other people. Other people have suffered worse pain than this. And that got me out of thinking about myself, this egoic self, my inner being as kind of the focus. And that helped him to develop a higher sense of awareness of others. Now, another quote I really like was from Khalil Gibran. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. So it's this idea when we are suffering and we are in pain, if we can reframe that and say, this is a learning opportunity for me, and golly, I'm going to have so much joy when this misery is over, but the fact is that we do develop a sense of maturity and a sense of growth when we do go through these periods of pain. And I think the biggest pain, from the point of view of the Dalai Lama, was this kind of egoic sense that we have this sense of I, and me in the world, rather than this sense of us and what our connection is with the rest of humanity. So kind of thinking about us, not just me. And Desmond Tutu said that when he would go to certain villages in Africa, he wouldn't say to someone who he met, how are you? He would say, how are we? And the concept is that it's not just that person. We all exist in this ecology of social dynamics, and we are as happy as our group is, right? Are you feeling happy right now? Well, maybe not. Maybe there's some work that we can all do. So they finished their chapter here by talking about these pillars of joy. They had 8 pillars of joy. And I like these. They are perspective. That is, you can always change your perspective and reframe whatever suffering you're going through to look at the positive part of it. Humility. Acknowledge that you're not the only one suffering. Everybody else in the world has an opportunity to do the same. And humor is another way of managing to develop joy. Acceptance. Sometimes our worst enemy is ourselves. We just resist what's happening to us rather than accept it and look at it as a gift, as an opportunity. And I'll get more into that with the gratefulness section. Forgiveness. I mentioned the lady who could not forgive her brother about this inheritance. Well, gee, who was she really hurting? Well, she was hurting herself. And the suffering just kept going on and on because neither of them could forgive and work with each other. Compassion is another pillar. Having that sense of feeling for our fellow man. We had a track at UTMB called the Physician Healer Track, and this is to help medical students avoid the well-known trap of compassion fatigue. Students come in, they're all excited, they want to take care of people. By the time they're there for 4 years, they're going, oh my God, another admission. Oh, that lady again. Oh, I'm so tired of this kind of thing. And they get kind of jaded, and they call it compassion fatigue. And so the Physician Healer Track was meant to help people develop resilience to maintain their compassion. And the hardest thing for students was self-compassion. The concept that you have to be compassionate to and befriend yourself so you can maintain compassion for others. Because if you don't, the well runs dry after a while. And so this is another one of the pillars of joy. Generosity. Hi, Mildred. Thanks for coming. Generosity, giving is its own form of developing joy. And this idea of that we're driven by in our society a lot of times is lack. We don't have enough. And yet, the more we give, the more we receive. And this idea of giving in charitable ways, and giving even when you don't think you can, is a tremendous source of joy. So those pillars again, in case you want to take notes: perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, generosity. Now I'm going to end up saying this joy is really a trait, not a state. Happiness a lot of times is what happens to you, and it's dependent on that, and then the happiness goes away and then you're back. But this idea, this underlying natural state of being a human being is one of joy, is a little bit unconventional in our society, but it's a persistent state of consciousness that we can experience no matter what circumstances we're in. And I'm going to give you a little tool here to help you find your joy. And you can use this anytime, anywhere, and it's something you're already doing right now, I hope. I don't see any corpses in the room. You're breathing, right? Now this is kind of part of this mind-body spirit connection, the idea of breath. And the breath is under our unconscious control. We're doing it all the time, or we're sleeping or whatever. But it's one bodily mechanism that we can control that actually changes our attitude. There's a nerve called the vagus nerve. Starts here in the brain stem and wanders down. The vagus comes from the Latin word vagrant or vagabond. Okay? So it's a wanderer, and it's the longest nerve in the body, and it wanders all the way down here to the gut. And it affects heart rate, it affects gut motility, it affects breathing, it affects mood. And the thing about the vagus nerve is you can change its tone by how you breathe. So most of the techniques, often in a variety of spiritual traditions, including the Tibetan Buddhist one, has to do with meditation. And meditation is a way of kind of resetting your whole nervous system. Even if you do just 10 minutes a day of some kind of sitting quietly, taking some deep breaths, it helps you develop more resilience to stress in your life, to the things that attack your joy, or obstacles to joy. So many people don't like the idea of meditation, and you don't have to be sitting on a cushion to meditate. You can be running. I like to do Tai Chi because it's a moving meditation. Some people listen to music, others do art. But for the purpose of this breath training, I'm going to teach you two things. We're going to just do a short exercise. One is called 4-7-8 breathing. I learned this from my friend and colleague, Dr. Andrew Weil, down at the University of Arizona. And this is something that we teach now at our clinics in family medicine for people particularly with anxiety and panic. And it's called 4-7-8 breathing. And so you want to do about 4 of these cycles, not more, but you can repeat it during the day. So if you find yourself spinning up with some anxious about something, you know, like I was maybe a little nervous about giving a talk, not too nervous, but you know, whatever it is that you're facing, maybe doing a job interview or something, this is a technique you can do. So what I'd like you to, I'm going to explain it to you first, and then we're going to go through 4 cycles. So it's called 4 because you're going to breathe in to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 7, you're going to hold the breath for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you exhale with a whooshing sound for 8 seconds. Okay, so that is really different than your normal breathing, right? 4, 7, 8, that's 19 seconds. How many times do you breathe a minute ordinarily? Medical students, nurses in the group? Any? You guys been breathing all your life, you don't know? Okay, normal breath, maybe 16 times a minute. If you're excited, 20, 25. If you're sleepy, 10, maybe 12. But by slowing down our breathing, we give our vagus nerve and our whole nervous system a sense that it's safe. We're calm. And you can see somebody's excited or breathing fast, you know, someone's sitting mellow, relaxed. So you're going to get into that second state. So we're going to do 4 cycles of inward and outward. The first one will just be practice, okay? So practice, just breathe in for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, whooshing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So that's slowing your breathing way down. That's probably about 6 to 8 breaths a minute. All right, so lay down anything that's in your lap, and if you're comfortable, close your eyes. If you don't feel like doing this, it's okay. It's no problem. But we're going to follow it with about 2 minutes of mindfulness meditation, which is I'll give you a little taste of that too. And these are things you can carry with you through the day. All right, so we'll start ahead. I didn't bring my little gongs, but we'll just pretend I got a little thing here. Okay, so let's start now on the count of 1. Breathe in, count of 4. 2, 3, 4. Hold to 7. 2, 3, 4, 7. And exhale, whoosh. 8 seconds. Repeat, in for 4. Hold for 7. Exhale for 8. Again. In, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7. Last cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4. quietly with yourself. Think how that feels. How do you feel? A little settled? A little calmer? Anybody? Comment? Experience? Lady shaking her head. What? What do you say again? Relax. Relax, okay. That's pretty quick Xanax, wasn't it? Whoa. Okay. Got you there in just a short time. So we're going to follow up with just a minute or two of what we call mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness is a simple meditation where mindfulness is kind of defined as moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness. But in terms of the meditation, you kind of just let go of thoughts. I always think of it as letting go of the monkey mind. The monkey mind is like our thoughts are jumping from one branch to another, to another, to another like a monkey. And just let that monkey go. Maybe picture a thought as something, a leaf floating away on a stream. And my wife and I will sit and meditate for 20 to 40 minutes every morning, and I do this as a way of resetting our nervous system for the day ahead. But just if you, again, don't have to do this, but if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes and just relax your belly. Make your belly nice and soft. That allows the fullest breath to go down. So this is called diaphragmatic breathing. Just let your belly be soft and take a slow, deep breath in and out. Just follow it like a wave of the ocean coming in and going out. Your thoughts may come to your mind again. Just let them go like a leaf floating down the stream. Feel your body just feeling warm and heavy. And when your mind wanders, just return the attention to the breath. Just follow that breath in and out. Slowly, we're going to come back to the room. Notice your breath still. Pay attention to it. Just release it. And again, notice just a minute or two of such breathing. You can introduce it as an activity anytime you feel stressed. Without closing your eyes, you can even do it in traffic, when you're stuck at a light or something. But what we find is if you can just put attention to something different than what's jumping around in your mind, because a lot of our stress really is internal. It's what's happening inside us, not what's happening to us. So by releasing that, and a simple technique, very low tech, no cost, no equipment, just your lungs and your mind. And then I'm going to close here with the little discussion about the book, Wake Up Grateful. The transformative practice of taking nothing for granted. So this lady was a healthy young woman, a writer, very involved in kind of organic lifestyle, social activism, vegetarian, all of the things that she thought were the right things, good, clean thinking, positive meditation practice. And when she was about 32, she started having these terrible night sweats and didn't feel right. And nobody could figure it out. It took about a year or more for the medical community to diagnose that she had lymphoma in her bone marrow, which is why it was difficult to find. It wasn't in the lymph nodes. But by the time they discovered it, she had fractured her spine where the cancer had spread to her vertebrae. So she was in tremendous pain. And this was a beginning of a new journey for her that led her to this practice of gratefulness. She realized that she had been taking many things in her life for granted. The subtitle of this is the transformative practice of taking nothing for granted. And she described gratefulness and gratitude as kind of different. Gratefulness is a state of being open to being thankful for whatever is happening right now. And gratitude is something we feel gratitude when someone does something for us, right? So it's transactional versus a state versus an attitude. And the gratitude is more transient, and where gratefulness is more a continuous state. One of the founders of what's this gratefulness kind of living concept is Brother David Steindl-Rast. He's a Dominican monk from Austria, I think. It's not happiness that makes us grateful, it's gratefulness that makes us happy. And the concept here is you can improve your sense of joy, your sense of happiness by being grateful for little things in your life, like waking up. Life is a gift. The name of the book, Wake Up Grateful. Life is a gift. When you greet each moment gratefully, you're always receiving. So to take the fact that we're just here and we're breathing and we're alive as a gift instead of taking it for granted. Now remember, she had this very serious cancer. It took about 2 years of really hard pounding chemotherapy, and she lost 60, 80 pounds and just really was on death's door many times. Many lessons she learned about giving and receiving. Everything is a surprise. Back to that little kid. Remember those little kids running around? Kids are always surprised by the smallest things of life. How fascinated they are with a little bug, or a sunrise, or a rainbow, or a bubble. The idea that the ordinary can become extraordinary. I was doing Tai Chi on the beach this morning while my wife was having her teeth cleaned. I was much happier than she would. And little foam is blowing around me, and the wind is coming, and the seagulls are singing, and the waves are whispering. It was just an ordinary beach day, but I was so thankful for it because it really was an extraordinary moment. Another one is appreciation is generative. What you appreciate, what you value grows. And when you appreciate someone in your life, tell them that you appreciate them, and that relationship will grow. If you appreciate your health, be thankful for it and appreciate every aspect about it. And here, love is transformative. When you open your heart and you embrace life, your heart will overflow and transform your life and the life of people around you. How am I doing on time? I'm kind of wrapping towards the end here. Good. I'm going to do a quick exercise here since we've got a little. Can I go a little bit longer because we started late? I want you to think about 3 things you're grateful for today. Just think about what are 3 things you're grateful for. Maybe you're taking them for granted. Now, if you're comfortable, turn to the person next to you and tell them what they are. We'll just take a minute, and then we're going to switch, and the other person will tell you their 3 gratitudes, or if someone's behind you. things. A minute isn't long enough for three things. We could have maybe just done two. But if you notice how you felt about that, you might say, gee, I didn't even think about being grateful for that ordinary thing in my life. And this idea that we can be grateful by intention, gratefulness is a bit like optimism. It builds on itself. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we are grateful, the more things we find to be grateful for. Eckhart Tolle asked us, give us this perspective. He's a philosopher, writer. When you go deeply into the present, gratitude arises spontaneously, even if it's just gratitude for breathing, gratitude for the aliveness you feel in your body. And that's why I think it's important that I taught you those two little breathing exercises, because you can always go into the present just by paying attention to your breathing. You can kind of let that monkey mind go away and pay attention to the moment and allow gratitude and joy to arise. So let's wrap up. These two Nobel Peace Prize winners, Tutu and Dalai Lama, maybe we could say peace was our major source of meaning as we go forward. All of us would like to have peace, happiness in our life, happiness and peace in our world. So by practicing intentionally, drawing more joy to your life, the bishop said, be a reservoir of joy, an oasis of peace, a pool of serenity that can ripple around to all of those around you. That would be a reservoir of joy, an oasis of peace, a pool of serenity. And to quote one of my favorite philosophers, Willie Nelson, energy follows thought. And so where we put our energy is, or where we put our thought is where our energy goes. And Earl Nightingale, one of my early mentors, we become what we think about most of the time. So if we focus on gratitude, we focus on the positive aspects of whatever is happening in our lives, even if it's difficult, thinking of it as a learning opportunity, something we're going to be more joyful for because we've gone through it. It's a way that we can make our lives and those lives around us more joyful. So thoughts are things. And so it's important for you to think about the way that you process your mind. And notice it, pay attention to it, because those thoughts become things. Energy follows thought, as Willie Nelson said. Choose your words and thoughts carefully, because they affect your consciousness. And I'm going to close with a very nice quote that I think wraps all this together from Parker Palmer, who's very popular among educators. He wrote a book called The Courage to Teach. And I'll read this to you because that's maybe a little far for those in the back. But he's still alive, he's 86 years old. And I think it summarizes what I'm trying to teach you today. We share responsibility for creating the external world by projecting either a spirit of light or a spirit of shadow on that which is other than us. We project either a spirit of hope or a spirit of despair, either an inner confidence in wholeness and integration, or an inner terror about life being diseased and ultimately terminal. We have a choice about what we are going to project, and in that choice, we help create the world that is. Consciousness precedes being, and consciousness can help deform or reform our world. Thank you very much. As Paul said, there's maybe some time for questions. That anybody questions? Stan?
It comes to mind, I imagine there's a lot of us that when we consider the viewpoint of optimist or pessimist, which one do you, we can, I think of ourselves as,
I'm just thinking that these viewpoints are something that is real easy for somebody that I believe is an optimist to embrace and hold. And I just wonder, how do you see pessimists relating to this and trying to incorporate it? Is it just some mindset that they can never overcome? The eternal pessimistic attitude that some people have.
All right, well, gee, what do we do with the pessimism? Actually, there's value to pessimism, right? Sometimes things aren't quite as rosy as we think. And even the bishop said he doesn't really believe in optimism. He thinks the term hope is better. The idea that no matter how bad a situation is, that there's always an opportunity for hope. And I think that's an opportunity for people that do tend to see the glass half empty, to say, hope somebody else comes and fills it up the rest of the way. But it is a matter of choice, and I think as many of the quotes that I shared with you, life is not immutable. We are not victims of what's going on around us. We have the opportunity to make a choice to think and act in a different way. And that's what's going to change you, and it's going to change our world. Any other questions? Professor?
I'm interested in quoting.
Thank you. I'm interested in a little thing that was at the end of one of your quotes. What is the monkey mind?
Well, if you ever sit down and try and meditate, you notice that your mind just jumps quickly from one idea to another. Okay, and it's very difficult for people who first start to try and meditate to get over that. You're still distracted. You're just moving from one thing to the other. So John Kabat-Zinn, who's kind of the leading exponent in the world on this idea of mindfulness, called it monkey mind, because you think of monkeys jumping from branch to branch to branch, thoughts jumping from neuron to neuron to neuron. That's monkey mind. And we can overcome the monkey mind by focusing on some kind of a practice, whether it's a sound, whether it's a breath, whether it's a thought, or a piece of music or something like that. So that's monkey mind. 100 words or less. Anybody else? Question, comment, criticism, pessimism, optimism?
I teach high school, so I'll use my teacher voice. And I've noticed over the years the amount of anxiety in our youth is skyrocketing. Do you want to speak to that?
The amount of anxiety in our youth is skyrocketing. This is well researched and well described now. And I think that a lot of it, people can aspire the causes, but I think there's a social isolation has come in our digital era. The kids are spending so much time with screens, and they're not having kind of the human interaction with friends and companions that they used to. Kind of natural play. That buffer has been removed. You know, they're kind of up against their Facebook and their TikTok and all of that. And of course, I think COVID was a dang bad thing for kids. I mean, they got even more isolated because they weren't even seeing anybody else. So it has created a lot of anxiety. And of course, the news cycle, creates anxiety. Sometimes you just have to shut it off, and that's where you kind of have to tune to some kind of an inner fountain of space rather than everything being out there. But thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Anybody have a pressing question before we close? Oh, thank you. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.